back to APSCC 2022. I'm Si-Soo, a Seoul correspondent for Space News and the moderator of this session. This session is all about Korea and Korean space startup. Let me give you brief information about the landscape of Korean space industry. The space industry here is still small and nascent, and there's under, I think, 100 companies engaging in space, and people working in the sectors are, I think, fewer than 1,000. But they are growing continuously under the strong support of the government, unfortunately, not by the market itself. The central government has launched a set of initiatives in recent years to nurture and incubating up-and-coming startups, and 3 companies now sitting on this stage are among them. So I think today's conversation will give you a glimpse of how space things unfold here in Korea and how Korean space startup work and to survive and trying to go to mainstream. And I will spend the last 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any question about Korea and the Korean space industry and anything related to Korea, please feel free to ask your question. Now I'm sitting with these 3 chief executive and senior executive from Korea's up-and-coming startups, and let's give you, each of you, give you some minute to introduce yourself and your company and what your company do and achievement you have made so far.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marshal Bronzewall. I am the director of global business in Innospace. Innospace is a South Korean aerospace startup established in 2017. We are developing or developed a small sat launcher, or rather micro launchers. We are getting ready for a first suborbital launch this December. We have 3 launchers in our lineup. We call our series the Hanbit series. The first one is close to completion. It's getting ready. We will have our first orbital launch probably the 3rd quarter of 2023 or the 1st quarter of 2024. So in general, we are a launch service provider. Our mission is to provide the most flexible launch service to our customers so that they can realize their goals. In other words, we take our satellite customers to where they want to go rather than bringing them where we're going. So that's a little bit about Innospace. Thank you.
One second. So, hello, nice to meet you all. This is Jae from UNASTELLA Corporation. So, UNASTELLA, which means a star in Latin, was founded this year, February, and then is aiming to develop a launch vehicle specifically for human space flight in the future. So, we founded, as I said, on last February, and then we could successfully secure the fund from venture capital Blueprint Partners with the amount of about $500,000, and then also could successfully assure a startup support program from the Ministry of Government with a similar price, which is also near to the $500,000. So our main goal is, of course, to make a revenue model with the human space flight, but in meanwhile of this long-term development, we'll also focus on the satellite delivery and cryogenic engineering service, and also the rocket engine design service to the people. So to achieve this goal, currently we are focusing on developing the engine system, which is run by electrical motor pump system with the kerosene and the liquid oxygen, which is a very popular combination in the rocket field. And then The demonstration model of our combustion chamber or combustor has been already fabricated, and now waiting for this combustion chamber to be tested in our test facility, meaning our test facility is also almost being completed to be built up. And then once our technical level of this engine system becomes mature, then we will also then we will switch our business model to focusing on the building of the launch vehicle, starting from the sounding rocket, maybe in the end to the human space flight model, which we are aiming to provide commercial service first in 2027. So thank you very much. By the way, the headquarters of UNASTELLA is in the center of Seoul, so please don't hesitate to stop by us. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sungmoon Lee. I'm founder of UZURO Tech. UZURO Tech is a space debris mitigation solution company. We established it in 2018 and still developing the devices for deorbiting CubeSats and microsatellites.
Oh, okay. Before talking about the broad theme for today's session, which is what's it like to do space business in South Korea, I want to give each of you an individual question about your business. Let's begin with the Innospace. Innospace is a maiden flight is scheduled for December from Brazil, and the rocket, the demonstration rocket will carry a Brazil payload, basically. So my question is, how things going for the December launch? And yes, first starting with this question, how things going on with the December launch?
Well, I have to say I'm very excited about the launch this year. Everything is going as planned. One thing that I didn't mention in my introduction is that we not only have launchers, but we also have a portable launch pad. As we speak, the launch pad is on its way to Brazil. The launcher will follow soon. We're going to airship it to Brazil. So everything is on schedule. The payload that we have is a navigation experimental payload for the Brazilian Air Force. So their launch requirement was suborbital. And so this suborbital launch will be mid-December. And we're keeping our fingers crossed. Hope everything is going to go fine.
And then there is voices that that the small launcher market is shrinking, and my question is, do you agree with this, that the small launcher market is shrinking? And then if it's yes, what is the strategy you are considering to surmount this kind of upcoming challenge?
Well, personally, based on some of the market reports that we've looked at, especially Euroconsult, my opinion is that the small sat market has the next decade is still looking up. We see nanosatellites, microsatellites together. Last year, it was about close to 1,900 launches, 1,900 satellites launched to the LEO. And according to these reports, we also see that in the next decade, it's probably 1,400 satellites are going to be launched, and most of them being nanosatellites or microsatellites. So I'm looking at the next 10 years that yes, it's going to continue, especially constellations, small and large. As long as the market is there, I think micro launchers, especially us in the micro launcher segment, we should probably be doing fine.
And the last question for Innospace, the company has raised so far, I remember, the $28 million so far through the 3 rounds of fundraising, and I'm not sure if you can answer this question. How much of it is left for now, and then do you plan to do another round of fundraising? And yeah.
Yes, I can't tell you how much money is left. That's not a good idea. Well, jokingly, but yes, we've raised up to 28 million US dollars. Most of them have been Korean investors. We are right now in the middle of a bridge round. And as far as I know, I think we're going to open up one last round next year before we go IPO. In my discussions with my CEO. I don't know if those plans are going to still remain the same. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah. So,
okay.
yeah. Okay. So it's still the money. Some monies are left. Is
Yes.
left, and okay.
Yes.
It's a question for UNASTELLA. It's you said is you are planning the business you are going to do is human space flight, and I remember that initially the business you pursue was space tourism. Is it correct?
Yes, it's correct. Starting from space tourism, maybe you can extend our business to a deeper space, like to the LEO, or hopefully to the Mars or to the Moon. Yes.
So initially thing will be a suborbital.
Yes, should be.
And this actually the space tourism is at the beginning stage worldwide for now. And why did you jump in this rig? And what was the opportunity you see in this segment?
For me, the space tourism, it's kind of a dream or a super challenging thing at this moment, but the major companies like Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, they are planning to send like almost 0.1 billion people to the space. And if 10% of it comes true, then some people sitting by us or walking by us will be people who already have been to the space. And I also have focused on the culture of, for example, Korea, that if a parent want to show their kids a space, not through a book, but in a real manner, would they do it? Then I say, if it is secure to be safe, then they should do it. And also, at the same time, also, space tourism, so building up a space tour, human spaceflight launch vehicle, is like a sounding rocket. It's on the way to the building up a launch vehicle to the LEO or to the Moon. So it can be a very nice demonstration model for the further extendable launch vehicle market, I think.
Okay, let's give you on a little bit more realistic approach. You said you raised $500,000. Is it enough for you to continue to do your business, or if you have any considering doing a kind of a fundraising round now? And the another question is, when do you think will be the year when the launch vehicle to have an inaugural launch? So
the last question was the last one was.
Last question is when do you think you would have an inaugural launch of your launch vehicle?
Okay. So for the first question, not easy to answer, as same with Innospace. Yes, we are speeding up for the development, which means the depletion of our fund is also speeding up. So we can, looks like can survive until the end or the beginning of this year or next year. So I have already opened the fundraising series, which is pre-A series since last July. And then now I'm talking with some capitalists at this moment to wrap up this series at this moment. And then the first commercial service to the launch vehicle, I think let's say the first commercial service cannot be human space flight because it needs verification and validation for a super long time. So I think the satellite launch vehicle or corresponding launch vehicle has to be proceeding. And I think it will be at the end of 2026 or around among 2027, I think.
So yeah, quite still many years, several years away. Okay, let's move on to the UZURO Tech. You are developing a Cubus, the deorbit solution, and still the under development, right?
Yes, right.
When you think is the first the product would be
Yes,
on?
we are planning the demonstration mission in 2024, and the demonstration satellites will be carrying our payload, which is a very thin and tiny propulsion system. And this mission will be pursued with the collaboration with the CubeSat platform company.
Korea.
No, actually, it's not a Korea company right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so 2024,
Yes, that's right.
just 2 years away.
Yes.
And actually, my attention is actually the deorbit solution is quite, I think, a hot topic because the space debris issue is an international issue now. So so far your product is not ready yet, but I think its potential is big because the space debris issue. How are you going to build your heritage after? Including the initial demonstration mission, how will you build up your heritage?
Yeah, we have a purchase plan from the foreign companies after our demonstration missions. So, and additionally, we'll provide our solution and devices for the domestic Korea space startup companies.
And the last question is about financial one. Actually, I look up on the internet and launch a search that is a news story about the UZURO Tech, and I saw no one about the fundraising you have made, and where did you get the money from? And could you tell us the fund you have raised, and then about the next funding round, stuff like that?
Okay. Still, our development cost and funds came from me, and we are we have a conversation with venture capitals, and the meeting is ongoing, and I hope we have a fundraising until end of this year.
Wow, at this moment it's quite like us, Elon Musk. In the initial stage, and Elon Musk spent his own fortune to build out his Falcon 1. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the main theme. What's like to do space business in South Korea? It's a question for all of you, and I'll give you a question, and you take turn answering to this question. We know that how much impact does the current economic downturn have on your company, and any difficulty in securing new investment or recruiting employees? So if you can answer with the specific cases you have had.
Generally, with an economic downturn, inflation, it's quite common that we have a increase in costs, and also, we increase in burn rate, and obviously it reduces our leg room. That's definitely the case with us too. In terms of investments, with the economic downturn, we know investors are generally afraid to invest, or they're shy, or they're not willing to invest very readily. That's another thing that we're seeing. And as far as I know, the space investment market has been down since the beginning of this year. Like I mentioned before, we are right now in the middle of a bridge round, but fortunately, we're basking in the success of the successful launch of Nuri, and then President Yoon's declaration of the new vision for this new space economy. So the mood is good now. I would say in this bad time, I think we're still being handed a good hand rather than a bad one. So it's looking up. I wouldn't say that it's bad as far as investments are concerned. Recruitment, definitely in the aerospace area, there is a difficulty in finding the right kind of people. We're located in Sejong, and we're a startup, so these things factor into us not being able to find at least some of the best talents out there. Most of them prefer to work for big companies like Hanwha or things like that. But yes, we've been able to grow this year. By the end of this year, we're trying to see if we can get up to 150 people, but we're almost there. Including our global subsidiaries, we're about 110, around that number right now.
Oh, well, as I said, I'm on the fundraising round as a pre-A series, and I haven't run any business before, but I desperately feel how this economic affects us in a conservative way, because I already have met numerous venture capitalists. I can't say the specific number, but any business analyst I've met say, is it possible to meet this much venture capitalists? So you can imagine how many. But the rate of getting yes, between yes and no, it's really low, which the venture capitalist says, if you have had started the fundraising a half a year ago, it would have been much better. But now it's really a hard time, a severe time for all the, not only for the space sector, but all these high technology based startups to survive and get the fundraising. But also at the same time, for me, it's fortunate that I could get some yes still. So I can still survive until next year, I think. So let's see what happens next year. And another aspect is that this economic recession influences not only securing the fund, but also the development cost. As you can imagine, the cost of the raw material has been increased, and the related service fee has been also increased. And in several cases, we already made an order, but the order becomes canceled because the rate of the exchange rate becomes drastically changing every day, so that they say, I cannot sell this product in this price, which was available until yesterday. And then about human resources, I can't feel that much at this moment, but if I see some friends who are running startups, I can see that both employers and employees both are postponing the hiring and moving into the new space. So that's my opinion.
Luckily, we didn't affect that much by the economic downtimes. Our investors who interested in our company is solid, and our employees are okay. And even we gathering more employees currently. But in the development group in our company has some issues in some different point of view. There is issues about the delivery schedule and the prices using the component using semiconductors. So the delivery schedules, almost of the components has delivery issues, and the components or the analytic devices using semiconductors costs are double up. So these things can be an issue and can be a risk of our future plan. But to minimize this risk, we have our plan to in-house develop the facility and in-house develop the component.
Then what is the biggest challenges you face? Because each company have different issue, like the Innospace and then UNA and the UZURO each have a different. What is each company's biggest challenge for now?
Definitely the challenges are different at different stages. With respect to the economic downturn, well, just like my friend here mentioned, what we when we order something for manufacturing or material, the costs are not the same, compared to when it was before. But we've been like extremely fortunate working with partners who are willing to provide a service with pre-inflation prices. In that sense, it's helping us actually to mitigate some of the inflation-related challenges. Yeah. So.
So as I said, UNASTELLA was founded last February, which was only 8 months ago. So, which means in other way around, it was not easy for us to make a physical, meaningful output so far. So for us, the most challenging thing is how will we demonstrate us? How will we prove us is the most challenging thing. And another is, so as I said, all the fund market, the venture capital market becomes conservative and they don't want to invest in the long-term market. And I anyway have to show them how I can produce, how I can have a possibility to produce the short-term revenue or profit with your technologies. For example, are you going to use your electrical motor pump system to any cryogenic system like in LNG ships or the liquefied hydrogen plant or so? So that is another aspect which is kind of disturbing us at this moment.
You said that you have met a lot of investors, and some said yes, they are willing to invest. What was the threshold that they required to decide whether or not to make an investment into your company? What was the specific threshold they suggested?
At this moment, it was me, how good CEO was at this moment. So because as I said, there was no physical output at this moment. And another was for a team who was built up only a half a year ago, they're seeing only the team members, how the CEO is, and how will they show a promising potential market profitability at this moment. And I said, and I focused on, as I said, the cryogenic market and also maybe the satellite launch vehicle, and including also the fact that we will use a common technology using like a kerosene logs, which is a very common combination with a very fast developing a protocol, which is an electrical motor pump system. So that's what they were made them being persuaded.
So how far you have reached that level so far?
It's like, I don't know, how can I say, I have a plan until it becomes, I don't know, if I say some engineering word, if I want to reach the engineering model, or let's say the flight model of our engine system, I think it will take from now 2 years from now for the engine system. And then for the launch vehicle, I really can't tell at this moment because I have seen Innospace and PRG who was in advance of me, and I could see a lot of challengings for them. So about the launch vehicle itself, I can't say at this moment.
The common worries about the space debris industry is everyone don't know when the market open is. But lately, the FCC of the United States announced and approved about the shortening and tightening the regulation about the space debris. So following their announcement, every spacecraft and man-made object should be disposed in five years after their end of missions. So this is our big chance in these industries.
Okay, now we have just a 10-minute left, and as I said, if you have any question, please ask me, and then I will take your question after asking them. There's just one question. How do you, as I said, Korea's space industry quite governed, driven by the government and not, unfortunately, the market, because demand is small and the demand mainly come from the government and the military. How do you assess the Korean government's space policy and regulation? We know that the government is trying to deregulate and give more authority to the private sector and transfer government state-funded technology to private sector. But do you think that the current policy and regulation is good enough for your business? And if not, what need to be done to create more favorable business environment for a space startup?
Well, my opinion is that Korea, among others, among some of the leading countries, entered the space race a bit late, and but they've finally managed to succeed. You know, with Nuri, it was a really great thing. 30 years of hard work finally paying off. So until now, the ecosystem, the aerospace ecosystem that worked with KARI, they've been instrumental in us, setting up as a company. But commercial space companies like us are just beginning to pop up, and so there are not many regulations or policies in place for entities like us. With Innospace, us launching overseas, or even probably considering launching from Korea, there are no regulations right now in place for commercial entities like us. So it is our hope, especially with President Yoon's new vision declaration, we're hoping to see that these regulations will take shape and they will be favorable for us. Right now, I think we're working together with the Ministry of Science and ITC. They've been extremely helpful. They've been extremely supportive with us, making sure that they're making sure that everything we're doing is happening. They're trying their best to remove all of the roadblocks that they also see together with us.
Let me start with the space agency, which is being planned and figured out how it is going to be operated and planned. So I'm a newbie in the startup, so I still have to go through a lot of experiences. But what I can feel is that the ministry, which are the counterpart of the space company, which we have to make a negotiation with or any discussion with, there are multiple ministries that we have to make a conversation with, which means we have to talk the same thing to many ministries and still deal with the same regulations and policies with the Ministry of Science or Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Transport, for example. And why I said the Korean Space Agency is necessary, because it has to be one, I think in the end, it will be better for a company. And the second thing is, what would be the worst case scenario regarding the regulation for a startup? If I imagine, would it be like existing regulation disturbs you? I think no to that, because the worst case is that there's no regulation and we have to make a regulation and we have to go through it. And then in the meantime, we have to survive. The startup has to survive. So for that, either we have to make regulation rules in advance following the UN COPOS, or we have to make a sandbox, for example, for this regulation, that we can play any things. If the safety is secured, then we can do anything like in US, starting from 2015, there's a sandbox about the human space flight. Why I'm saying this is that we will be focusing on the human space flight, and For example, the US has the commercial cruise space flight regulation and guideline made by FAA, while we don't. And I'm really worried about how many years will it take to make this regulation, go through this regulation, and go through the verification. So this is another aspect what I may want to the Korean, the ecological situation, especially with the government.
I want to talk about the regulations. Many people worries about the regulations and guidelines which affect on our space industries. But I think some regulations and rules can make a new market point. Actually, we are at the market which generated by the regulations, the space debris industries. So we are actually welcoming about the regulations and guidelines. And we also have an opinion about the reinforcement of these regulations about the space debris and space traffic management.
Okay, just a 3 minutes left. Any question on the audience? And you please raise your hand. And yeah, the gentleman.
Yeah, for Sungmoon Lee of UZURO, could you spend 100 seconds just describing what your deorbiting technology is? Its mass, weight, what it does, and then also who's the platform provider that is agreed to use it if your demonstration flight succeeds?
Yeah, it's a kind of a propulsion system using chemical propulsion device. But the main differences between other solutions and our solution is the shape and volume. The shape and volume is very tiny, and it's very thin propulsion system. So you can put it on the surface of satellite, not inside the payload volumes. So any customer can secure the volume inside their payload and attach our solutions outside of the satellite. And the platform provider is, well, I'm hard to say because they don't want to announce it.
That's too bad. Okay, so what is the propellant?
Propellant is a monopropellant based on HAN, hydroxyl ammonium based monopropellant.
Okay, and does this propellant system, this deorbit system, can it be activated autonomously in case the satellite is completely failed, or does the satellite itself have to activate it?
Yeah, both methods are possible. First one is the command from the ground telemetry command, and the second one is self-decision from the satellite.
Just one clarification, though. If I may, this is not a description of debris. A satellite that's operational at end of life may become debris, but it's just a satellite. Debris is when it's lost control and it's just drifting and headed towards other objects that you want to protect, right? So you're not talking about picking up garbage in space. You're talking about taking living satellites that may be unable to deorbit themselves, and you will do an attachment, and then you will bring them up into graveyard or down into the ocean.
Yeah, first we grab the satellite solution, the orbiting solution is make the satellite down to the oceans. And we call this is the post-mission disposal system. And because we are, that's the why we focuses on the microsatellite and cubesatellite market, because the large satellites already have their own propulsion system or the orbiting solutions, but the CubeSat and microsatellite don't have any solutions. Okay.
Okay, time is up, and thank you for listening, and thank you so much.
Thank you.